Hello and welcome to the agenda on Politics Social, and as always I'm joined by Phil Moorhouse, who's not happy with me saying that I was waiting for Phil, as he's usually waiting for me. Sorry about that, Phil. Hating Pud saying all this time I knew it was Phil. Anyway, so this week we're going to be talking a bit about the latest massive scandal in which Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, facilitated. So he got a mate of his to facilitate an £800,000 loan to buy wallpaper or something, and then put his mate made him chairman of the BBC.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, that was Boris Johnson.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the thing about that gets me about this as well is, I mean, you can argue that some of the rules should be changed, and I think I would in some cases.
Yeah.
But the rules have all been followed. Whereas when the media, but they moaned when it was Boris Johnson. Yeah, because Boris Johnson broke the bloody rules, and so did Rishi Sunak. Like, if you go on about the wallpaper, for example, that wasn't within the. In fact, Boris Johnson lied about it. He lied about who paid for his flat refit because it was. And when he was caught out, he didn't go, "Oh yes, sorry, I'll just amend the declaration." No, he didn't. He had to say, "Oh, I've now paid it myself, so I've like swapped the money around." So he never declared that.
Yeah.
It was always
also,
kept quiet, and even when he was caught out, because it was against the rules.
But he became leader in the summer of 2020, and he wasn't prime minister until
20. What do you mean? Oh, sorry.
Became leader in 2020.
Keir Starmer, yeah.
Yeah, and then he was once you're prime minister, you don't have to declare this stuff. You only have to do it when you're the leader of the opposition. So he was leader of the opposition for 4 years, and they're saying it was 100,000, which is only 20,000 a year. And considering like one of these events, like technically, if you're a member of the public, it will cost you thousands of pounds, but it's not like the taxpayer had to pay for it or anything like that. So the way it's been framed by the tabloids and the usual suspects, it's a bit
whole media. And I think you have two sides to this. Obviously, the Tory media report on Labour and the Conservatives, and indeed anyone else, very differently because they're backing the Tories, right?
Yeah.
But you also get other media who do it differently, and I think partly it will just be because if something becomes an issue, it's very clickbaity. And to be honest, like at the moment, being quite frank, as someone who spends all my days doing this, there's not a lot of political news out there at the moment.
Yeah.
There are some interesting bits, don't get me wrong, but nothing you're really going to get your teeth into. So little things like anything that can be turned into a scandal. It's like. And I do think some of the rules should be some of Labour's reaction to it's a bit crap. Like,
yes, I said this morning on Morning Brew. I said, that why aren't they briefed? You are going to be asked the question about this. Here's what you say. Johnny Reynolds and Angela Eagle yesterday on the radio and the TV. They were both fumbling for answers to this, whereas they should have been briefed. You're going to be asked this question. It's in all the newspapers. Here's what to say. To make it sound not as bad, and to turn it around onto the Tories and say, don't forget, Boris Johnson took £6.2 million in gifts when he was Prime Minister. But of course, he didn't have to declare that because they're the rules. You have to declare it if you're Prime Minister.
Well, I would go more than that. You just need simple things. You just need to say, what rule do you think is broken? What rule do you think is broken? Focus on that, because a lot of people, really when it comes to it, you just want to avoid people thinking there's anything corrupt about this. So just say, what rule do you think is broken? As far as I can tell, the only thing they can possibly have is he put in a declaration late. Now, I'm going to say, on the one hand, it happens all the time. MPs do it all the time. It's like any of us do. It's when it comes to paperwork, but at the same time, just politically, they should be aware that they're going to get absolutely hammered. I mean, to be fair, over the summer, there were quite a few of us wondering if Nigel Farage would even enter his financial interest, right?
Yeah.
So if he'd have handed those in late, we'd have been getting antsy, wouldn't we? We'd have been going, what's going on here then? So Starmer should understand that his own political opponents would do the same. So he should have been on it.
Did you hear the introduction to James O'Brien's show yesterday when he was talking about Farage when he was in the... So Farage was just been interviewed by Nick
Yeah, I saw
Ferrari.
that. Yeah, I did see that one.
And then James O'Brien took over, and he basically just absolutely rinsed Nigel Farage, hopefully to his face, because apparently they were both in the same studio.
It's been caught out by lies again, because what Farage was saying is, I couldn't do the surgeries because the security team under the Speaker's office told me not to. I'm terribly important.
And the Speaker's office have said, no, this isn't true, haven't they?
Of course, and everyone knew it wasn't true, because the whole point of that security team is to help MPs put things in place. Like Nigel Farage, for a while, has he still got the bodyguard? That's all you need. Yeah. That's all you need. You don't even need to go to that extent, because the only people who've ever assaulted Nigel Farage, it's been with a dairy-based product like, a milkshake basic. Not that there's much dairy in a McDonald's milkshake, I suspect, but nonetheless.
It's still good, though. It tastes good, even though it's bad. Thank you very much to Alec Barrett for the £2 super chat. The Arsenal stand is actually saving the taxpayer money. Well, you could argue that he could just not go. But he is a season ticket holder for Arsenal. He wants to go to the match.
It's the thing is, that's one of those things. I'm going to come up to, someone just put a comment there, optimistic nihilist. I'll come up to that comment in one moment, but I'll just say on the football thing, first of all, he's not going to do any favours for Arsenal Football Club, because that would get him into a lot of shit. There's a difference.
God, could you imagine?
There's a difference between someone who runs private medical services, which might or might not get an NHS contract, donating a load of money to the health secretary.
Yeah.
At which point you keep very careful eye on whether or not they get a nice lucrative contract and whether they should have done or not.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between that and getting a box at the football match. But I am still going to say this, just politically, he'd have been better off staying in the stands. And I did see a really crap comment there. And I don't know who it came from, but obviously someone around Starmer saying, but it'll save money for the taxpayer if he doesn't he'd need more security in the stands. It's like, well, then have more security in the stands. What a crap. That is a Rishi Sunak-esque response, that. I'm actually saving you money by removing myself from the unwashed masses. So that was a bad one. But I'm going to say that there was a comment up there. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I liked going to a local football match and I was offered a box, I would go, oh, that's brilliant, it's very nice.
We all would. That's the thing. I mean, I've plugged into so many gigs, it's ridiculous.
As a politician, you do have to constantly think to yourself how it looks. But Optimistic Nihilist saying there, fill the Labour apologies, you can't defend this one, I just have done. It says double standards. What's the double standard? Point to me. Tell me right now where the double standard is. Point to me any criticism. I've already just told you. Boris, so he broke the rules. He didn't declare. It wasn't declared late. He didn't declare them at all. So there's no double standards there. The things that we have attacked Conservatives for, we haven't attacked them for accepting things that were all within the rules. We've attacked them for things that were not within the rules. So there is no double standards here. Now, we can still say that because it's a politically bad look, because most members of the public are not going to distinguish between something that could appear to be a bribe and something that clearly isn't, like a box at Arsenal. Like, what are they bribing him for? What are they going to get from him? Nothing.
But he could dock Manchester City 20 points and say, I can do that because I'm the Prime Minister.
Yeah, but he can't. It's not within his remit. He's got no more ability to interfere. Well, you wouldn't, because, I mean, we're already, we've already got the international football authorities, FIFA and UEFA, looking very carefully at these plans for the football regulator, because they're saying, don't be interfering, because otherwise we'll kick you out of your own bloody Euros. Yeah. Which will happen. So no, well, I mean,
the Gam-Gams would love that. It means we don't have to play in Europe, that terrible continent, which is the worst continent ever in the world. I've got some super chats to go through, Phil. I've got one angry pagan. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. With a £5 super chat to say, I'm sure the historical norm is that leaders get gifts. So long as no conflict of interest is there, this seems pretty average stuff to me. Whereas Yoni's making this point, thank you very much for the super chat, Yoni. How hard can it be to make a matching donation? Well, that's a good point. And then finally, we've got Poninator with £20. That's very generous. Thank you very much this Friday afternoon. Saying wind and solar farms far-right riot handling, expert appointments, National Wealth Fund, house building targets. Are Labour perfect? No, but I can name you more good they've done in a few weeks than the Tories did in 14 years. And then we've got, good point. And then we've got Ivan in there, just slipped in there with the super chat. Thank you, Ivan. Regardless of whether this is right or wrong on Labour's part, the Tories have absolutely no room whatsoever to point the finger. That's very true. And then Scott has to say, thank you very much, Scott. Everyone's been very generous this morning. Why are Labour MPs so bad at defending this? Yes, this is what I want to talk about. Bloody Labour comms. Labour PM doesn't have the same money to afford necessary clothing that Rishi, Boris and Cameron have. That's true.
It's not even that. The clothing is a complete non-starter. I can see how some of the things like, the football stuff like that, it's like, just pay for your own stuff. Yeah. I can see how people will look at that, even though, again, none of it is against the rules. But the clothing stuff, I mean, I use the example. It's like me. I wear T-shirts with slogans. I wear hoodies. Now, if I was going around campaigning, not on behalf of someone, but I was actually, campaigning to be Prime Minister, say, the Labour team would take one look at me and say, "You're not going out in that, are you?" "No, you're not. Get yourself in a posh Armani suit." And I'd go, "I ain't got one." "Bloody hell. Ali, mate, give him a suit." So that's all that's happened. There's, and also, the guy, the reason why they're going, "Oh, this donor is paid for this, he's paid for that." Now, I will say, Angela Rayner, going on holiday in his flat. Again, it's the optics. He's not a donor. He is a donor, and he's actually a huge donor, but he's also a Labour politician. That's never reported, is it? He's a Labour politician.
Yeah, he's a Lord. He's the House of Lords.
Yeah, he sits on the Labour benches, so he's a Labour politician. So people say, "Oh, what's he doing in Downing Street?" What is a Labour politician doing in Downing Street when it's run by a Labour government? And it's like, no one would have said anything about this before. Remember, and
it's a really good point, Phil, because, Lord Cameron was made a Lord so he could be a bloody minister, for Christ's sake. So, yeah, that's worth pointing out.
This happens all the time. Downing Street was awash with Conservative politicians when no one battered an eyelid.
Yeah.
No one said anything. When we had a pop at some of the people involved, like Dominic Cummings, we weren't having a pop because he wasn't an MP or something. We had a pop because he was an idiot.
Yeah. Alec Barrett, £5 super chat, thank you very much. If Starmer was in the stands, the right-wing press would have gone after him for wasting taxpayers' money. There is no win here. Can we talk a little bit about what civil servants are paid? I have no problem whatsoever with Sue Gray getting more money than the Prime Minister. In fact, I think it's quite a good thing that a woman is getting paid more than a man. For a change, because that doesn't normally happen. This has always
been the case, though. They're making a big thing about this. Always been the case that senior officials actually get paid.
Civil service.
The issue here is that the Prime Minister is not paid enough. In fact, it was pointed out that Neville Chamberlain in today's money was paid £800,000 a year.
Wow.
So actually, the pay of Prime Ministers has dropped in real terms massively.
Yeah.
That's what the issue is. It's the fact...
Which I think is wrong. I think MPs and PMs should be paid more because it would encourage people like me and you to go into politics instead of it being absolutely the playground for the already rich, the born rich, which it is at the moment.
But this is the people pointing out, in terms of staffing, 160, what is it, Sue Gray's, £167,000 a year. For someone in her position, never mind, I'm not even talking about the private sector. In the public sector, you would not get a chief executive on that salary, even in the public sector. In fact, the person who was criticized, no, he wasn't criticizing it, sorry, but he was talking about this row blowing up. And this row blowing up, by the way, as far as I can tell, it's by people who are also political advisors who think they should be paid more. Well, it's like, go into the office and demand a better wage or say you'll walk then. I mean, or do you know what? Get a union. Is there a union for political advisors? Sort yourselves a union out if you've got an issue. But the guy who was moaning, not moaning, sorry, I keep stopping myself, who was talking about this row was Chris Mason of the BBC, right? So there's Keir Starmer, who gets paid £165,000 a year as Prime Minister. Sue Gray gets £167,000 a year. Chris Mason of the BBC, I'm trying to find the exact figure, but it's somewhere between £220,000 and £260,000 a year. To be the person who reports on the top political stories of the day for the BBC. And this is what he come up with. and all it is, it's a big, it's not even a row. It's someone whining they're not getting paid enough. And it's like, okay, well, there's lots of people in the country whining they don't get paid enough. It don't get splashed across the front page of the BBC website. And what you do about it is, first of all, if you're not in a union, get in a union. And secondly, if you don't like it, you go to your boss and say, I should be paid more. And if you're really sure of that, then if they don't pay you more, you go and work somewhere else. This is what I keep telling my wife to do, because she is getting screwed over by her workplace. She, and I keep saying to her, leave and come back.
Yeah. Captain Roberts, thank you very much for the super chat, saying I'm an anarcho-syndicalist. Easy for you to say. And I still like champagne and decent tailoring.
So I don't like
a champagne syndicalist. What's a syndicalist?
I think this is a reference to Monty Python.
Okay. So, but are we being accused of obviously, making excuses for Labour and
but what's it, like? What rule have they broken?
But this is the thing. I think that they've got a point in that Labour need to be purer than pure, and that they're not at the moment. And
no, the optics about
they are and the one thing they're shit at is optics. And this is infuriating for me. Like, if they've got this money, why don't they spend it on like someone who's really good at PR and marketing and stuff?
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, it's what gets me all the time about everything. Like, they'll get these people in. Whenever you sort of try and identify someone who's a senior political advisor, and I don't know the ones particularly in Down Street at the moment, but I've looked. But if I was to find someone who's a senior political advisor, but not themselves like an MP or anything, and you'll look at if you can find their history on Wikipedia or something. Let's say they're well known enough to have a Wikipedia entry, and it's always the same, almost always the same. They went to university, they came out of university, and they got a job immediately being a political advisor. And it's like, how does that work?
Yeah.
And that's what they've done. And so you've got some of these people who are around this table, and not all of them, but some of them were around this table, and they actually they just got a job as a political advisor. And okay, it's one of those where it's like, okay, there's not going to be a structured career ladder for it. But what's your experience in anything?
Well, yeah, Dominic Cummings was just an old mate of Michael Gove. That's why he was brought into the fold. And a lot of these people would just work for each other, or they went to school with each other, or they just knew each other from somewhere. Dido Harding famously went to university with David Cameron, and that gave her elevation to the House of Lords. Owen Paterson is back in the news.
Had a lot of experiences, including in the civil service.
I think she deserves it. Then as well. I think she deserves that amount of money, and I have no problem. And people saying, well, she's getting paid more than other people in their department. Yeah, that's the way it works in most businesses, departments, isn't it? Not everyone gets paid the same. It's all based on experience.
So it's commenting there. So G Whistler saying, problem is Phil keeps narrowing his definitions so no criticism can be live. No, I don't decide the definitions. Like, what I'm saying is no rules have been broken. Therefore, if you want to make an argument a rule should be different, then say so. But it's not double standards to say no rules have been broken when no rules have been broken. So what you should be saying is so what should the rules be? I am more than happy. And do you know what? In fact, if it was up to me, there would be no gifts at all of any. Well, okay.
Yeah,
if you go along to a school and they give you a sandwich, okay, declare it still, but above a certain value, you shouldn't accept any gifts at all, that have monetary value, whether or not anyone paid for them. Because some of these things don't, although they've got monetary value, I think you made this point a bit earlier, no one actually spent anything on them.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in theory, I could, a window cleaner may go around and clean your windows as a gift. It hasn't really cost them much apart from the petrol to get to your house.
Time.
But it has monetary value.
Yeah.
So, don't accept anything. And I would say the same of donations. I would say, no one's allowed to give more than, say, £10 a year to any political party. And you essentially have public funding of political parties. That's what I would do, but that's not what we have at the moment. So all you can ever expect is that politicians follow the rules.
Yeah.
That's all you can expect. Now, if you want the rules to be different, you can argue for that. But what you don't get to do is to beat someone over the head for doing what is within the rules. And you can beat a politician up for lying, or for saying they'll do a thing and then not doing it, or for saying they won't do a thing and then doing it, or for breaking the rules.
Yeah.
What you're doing here is attacking someone for doing something within the rules. And I'm not saying you didn't attack, but no, I am actually going to say a lot of people that are doing this attacking did not attack Boris Johnson for doing things within the rules, possibly because there was so much he was doing outside the rules. You just focused on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Clubby Boroscope is saying, I don't really care about any of this. Just fix the NHS, tax the rich, open safe and legal routes, improve people's material conditions. I think that's the big thing, because in 5 years' time, people are going to look back and say, has my situation improved in the last 5 years, my personal situation? If the answer is no, they won't vote for Labour. If the answer is yes, they might vote for Labour. Not necessarily, it's not guaranteed.
Well, they have to feel it. It's always...
Yes.
Well, politics is perception. So you can actually... It is actually possible to improve someone's life and they don't notice it, and then they don't think you have. Yeah. And it is possible to screw them over and they think it's still better than the alternative, so they still vote for you. Yeah. So it is really about the perception.
Yeah. But David Smith says Labour are held to a different standard, though Starmer also campaigned heavily on integrity and public service. Yes. Not fussed about the tickets since they go to the game anyway, but the clothes scandal looks worse. I mean, it's all over. I mean, it's the fact that they had to declare it as well. And I know people are going to go, oh, but you just make an excuse for the Tories. The last 5 Tory leaders were all prime ministers, or the last 4 were all prime ministers. They were never leaders of the opposition, and therefore they didn't have to declare these gifts that were given to them. And like I said, but Boris Johnson took an insane amount of money off people when he was prime minister. It was a massive grift for him. He made a lot of money out of it, just like Trump in America. Because
when he left,
the rich don't want to pay tax.
He bought a bloody mansion with a moat.
Yeah. But I mean, that's not. But again, I think that with Labour, they need to be purer than pure on this. If he's going to say, I'm going to stand on a platform of integrity, it does look a lot like, to most people who aren't interested in politics and don't know the rules and don't care about the ins and outs of policy and everything, they just read what they read in the newspaper. Yeah. They see what they read. They see this stuff in the newspaper and they go, oh, that doesn't seem very morally, that seems like someone with low moral fibre.
It's because as far as the public are concerned, there are double standards because the media have told them so. And Labour, and that's why, as I say, the likes of Reynolds and Eagle, what they really needed to just say is, sorry, what rule do you think is broken? Sorry, what rule do you think?
Okay, and then the question would be, but don't you think it looks bad? They didn't break a rule, but don't you think it looks bad?
I would turn it back and say, what, following the rules? No, and then I would give
my own rules saying that you have to take donations, you have to take gifts.
No,
it's not like you're following the rules.
You just declare them.
It's like a proactive thing.
But then what I would say is, what I do think looks bad is when Boris Johnson accepted a load of gifts that were against the rules, and we know they were against the rules because when he was caught out, instead of coming clean about it, he then handed the money back.
That's what I would say if I was an MP defending Starmer, or if I was Starmer himself. But the way Starmer came back on it, and he didn't say that. He said, well, it would have cost more in security if I've been in the stands rather than an executive box. It is difficult because I know what it's like. You get a VIP pass to a gig and it's cool. Like, what?
But as a politician, particularly as the prime minister, you've got to think how it looks.
Yeah.
So you've actually got to make a show of wearing the old sackcloth.
And that's the point that a lot of people are making in the chat. It's not about the rules. It's about how it looks. It's optics, and this is again Labour's, Achilles heel. This could be the thing that they lose the next election on. Is not their policies, not what they actually do, but literally not being able to convey to people that we're doing a great thing here.
I don't think they'll lose the next election from it, but if they don't sharpen up, there'll come a point. It's a bit like, take my local MP for example. So they've changed the constituency boundaries. So we have a Labour MP, but that was just because of the nature of this year. It's going to be a conservative-leaning marginal, is what it's going to be. So, but the sort of place that had these boundaries been like they were back in 1997, Labour would have won in 1997. They'd have won it in 2001, but they'd have lost it in 2005, unless the Labour MP added a large premium to their own name outside of the party.
Yeah.
So my local Labour MP is going to have to really make a big show of being a good local constituency MP if he wants to stay an MP in the long term. And I view the same thing with Labour. Things like this, at the moment, you could argue Labour, okay, they're doing it badly, but in a few years' time, they should be able to come back with, yeah, but okay, you're picking on this, but we've done this and we've done that, and these people are now better off because of this, and these people are now feeling better because of this. So it will be easier for them. But in more like 10 years' time, when the gains are smaller, they'll keep trying to say, oh, yeah, but you're better off than you were, a lot better off than you were 10 years ago. But then people are going, are we better off than we were 1 year ago? And they'll say, well, yeah, we can, if we get the magnifying glass out, we can show you on the graph. But it's like if people, because there comes a point where any gains there's diminishing returns on improvements in anything.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's when they'll need to be sharper. They should still be sharper now, but that's when they'll need to be sharper, when it becomes harder to explain what you're doing.
Could give some advice to Starmer and the rest of them, it's the same advice that I give to someone if they're going to go on a date or go for a job interview. Don't say anything negative. That's it. That's the rule. Just don't say anything negative. Just keep everything positive. Just say, okay, we're struggling, but we're going to make it better. We've got this obstacle, but we're going to clear it, and things are going to be. You just get that positive message across. But instead, they're like, oh, it's going to be horrible. Oh, this budget. Oh, mate.
It's because what
you don't want to see what's in this budget. Oh, God, you thought that horror film was horrifying. This budget, my God.
There is talk that they're going to boost it up a little bit at the conference, but I mean, I understand what they're doing. They're trying to destroy what was the Conservatives' greatest ever con, which is that they're good with the economy.
Yes.
But the problem is what they're not. They're supposed to say the Tories are actually really bad at the economy, and here's the proof. But we're really good with the economy, and here's the proof for that. And they're forgetting the second bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much to Ivan Ambrose there for the £20 super chat. Robert Jenrick is resorting to far-right rhetoric yet again by saying the English identity is under threat. This was on the front cover of the Mail today.
Yeah, sure.
This evil rhetoric was emphatically rejected at the election, but they're still carrying on with it. Thanks so much for the super chat, mate. That's really kind of you. But also, you're absolutely right. It's, English identity under threat. Are you kidding me? Have you spoken to one angry pagan?
The thing is, I don't think it was rejected. That's the problem. The Tories were rejected. The Tories were rejected on the basis of competence. Not so. In actual fact, it's a line that can work. It's just it is evil because it's incredibly divisive. Apart from anything else, I don't even know what English identity is, and I keep saying that, and I'm genuine about that. I do not know anything that is genuinely, apart from H dropping. That's the only thing I've ever identified as being peculiar to the English.
Monty Python.
Anything else.
Oh no, because Terry Jones was Welsh.
And there's an American in it as well.
Oh yeah, there was a Yank.
The other one,
Terry Gilliam.
Yeah. So, but the although he just did the drawings, didn't he, in the animations?
He also directed the movies.
And banged coconuts together. Yes, he was a director, but in terms of in front of the camera, he banged coconuts together. But the I really, honestly cannot. If you try and identify anything, this is peculiarly English. Either it will be a part of England, or it will actually be much more widely spread across Britain.
Yeah,
there's nothing. There's H dropping. That's all I can think of.
I hate H bomb dropping. No, I One Angry Pagan. I miss your super chat. Sorry, my friend. I'm bigging up One Angry Pagan for keeping English culture alive. And they're missing super chats. Sorry. But thank you. It's very kind of you. Much of what I own, I had gifted to me. Same here. Tories and the right-wing donors and the press have made gifts just a form of corruption. Nothing is allowed to be good. Yeah, you're right, because they've turned something that should be, a freebie, and a nice thing that someone does for someone else, they turned it into corruption because they were like, okay, what are you going to do for me? Yeah. English identity, Tony Hancock, says Roger.
He was popular beyond, in other places as well.
Well, Tony Hancock,
Yeah.
the only man named after 4 different parts of the human body.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then we got Dog Soldiers and 28 Days Later. I guess that's English culture. No, hang on, what? That's Danny Boyle. You never see Tommy at Morris dancing lessons. You mean Tommy Robinson, who has an Irish passport?
You don't very often see him in England.
Yeah, true. It's usually in Spain or Greece or somewhere.
If
Somewhere
he's in
nicer.
England, he's either
Somewhere
in
hotter.
front of a big crowd with his begging bowl, or he's in court.
Yeah. God, he's a gobshite, that man. Stephen says, to be honest, the 14 years of Tories have made me a lifelong Labour or Green voter, and I think a lot of my age are the same. Starmer will have to do a lot to change that. That's true. I mean, I've never voted Tory. I can never, ever see myself voting Tory, ever. I mean, you're supposed to get more right-wing as you get older. I honestly believe I've got more left-wing as I've got older. In a lot of my attitudes, I've become more progressive and become more...
Well, what happens as well is you'll get... When you see a particular system not working, you could argue no system works brilliantly or has ever worked brilliantly in this country at any rate. Then you naturally be more against it. So the Conservatives are suffering from the fact that they've made sure that conservatism didn't actually benefit anyone in the last 14 years, apart from the super wealthy. It actually hasn't benefited anyone. That's where they've gone wrong. Yeah. You can say it's cynical politics to identify who your key voters are and make sure that they at least do well out of it. But they didn't even do that. They screwed over all of their traditional... They screwed over rural areas. They screwed over... Even though, obviously, at the moment, pensioners might be more well-disposed towards the Conservatives than Labour, but they screwed over pensioners as well. They screwed over middle-aged people, who you've now got people entering middle age who have lower standards of living in some cases than they did in their 20s, and that's just madness.
Yeah.
That's utterly mad.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely is. Did you see Owen Paterson is in the news?
No, what's he done again?
So 10 years ago, he made a big speech about how we should leave the European Convention of Human Rights because it's evil and it allows bad people to get away with murder and not be deported, and it won't let us send people back to France, even though it's a safe country, and blah, 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 blah.
It's not where they came from.
Right-wing crap that the right like to come out with. Anyway, you'll never guess who was at the European Court of Human Rights saying that they had their rights violated.
Yeah.
None other than Owen Paterson. Yeah. Funny that. It's almost as though they're all a bunch of massive hypocrites. But
yeah. Well, they are. I mean, there was something in the Daily Mail talking about in terms of deporting foreigners, which we can do and we do. And it's talking about this guy who committed a crime, went to prison, serious crime, and wasn't deported. It's reporting this in the Daily Mail today or yesterday. I can't remember. I read it today. So the Home Office just never got around to it. And of course, this was under the Conservatives. Do you think this might be because the Home Office made such savage cuts that they didn't have the staff to be on top of something like this?
Yeah. But
there's no mention of that in their article. They just said, this guy who was allowed to commit crimes because he wasn't deported and should have been. And it's like, under which government? This was a couple of years ago, last year. Oh, right, yeah, when the Conservatives were in power. And they don't make that, and nor do they explore why this might have been. If the Home Office never got around to it, is that because they didn't have enough staff to manage their workload? Maybe we shouldn't be pushing for so many civil service cuts if we can't actually manage the workload.
Sfax is saying, have you tried to contact Labour's advisors with suggestions to complaints? Maybe it can be a viable path, make those who Labour consult.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine how many people must write into Labour saying, you seem to be getting this wrong, I've got a much better idea, you should totally listen to me.
And also, are they going to listen to a gobby scouser? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's It's difficult to get people in real life to that I know to actually listen to me when I say things like "Don't vote for Brexit." It's a very, very bad idea. So I don't think some stranger who doesn't know me from anyone is going to go with that. But thank you very much to Alec Barrett there with the £5 super chat. Thank you. Polling for the Independent has pensioners still preferring Labour 18% over the Tories on 12%. Well, that's good. Although
70% they don't like either.
Yeah, 70% are voting for me. Yeah,
I'm always hesitant with polls because you need to know who it's from and what it's about and stuff like that. But if that is true, that's still 70% who don't like either of them.
And then we've got Captain Bart Roberts. Top 10 names escaped from the riot as he organised at the Cenotaph in a Price-themed cab. Oh, Pride. It was Pride. Yeah, Pride-themed cab is a memory I love visiting. So this is when... Thank you very much for the super chat there, Captain Bart Roberts. This is when Tommy 10 names fled the capital because his mob got a bit unruly. And they were urinating on the Cenotaph or something. And he jumped into a Pride-branded taxi cab.
Because remember at the time, they were all talking about the pro-Palestinian marches. Oh yeah, they're going to defile the Cenotaph there. And it's like, no, they're perfectly respectful. Yeah. And then, so Tommy Robinson does his counter thing, and they immediately start basically pissing on war memorials and climbing on it and all sorts.
Yeah, nice people who feel really British and want to be British and British. Ivan, thank you very much for the super chat, Ivan. Oh wow, they're coming thick and fast. Owen Patterson, someone who doesn't agree with the European Court of Human Rights unless it suits him. Exactly, Ivan. Thank you very much for that. And One Angry Pagan, thank you so much. The giving of gifts is ancient and core to nearly all cultural and society bonds one way or another. There are more valid ways of criticising Labour. I completely agree, mate, and it's a really good point to you. The giving of gifts, like so many cultures have a elaborate thing about giving gifts. I mean, not just in the UK, we got, well, in Christianity, I guess, it got Christmas and things. But I always loved when I was in the Far East, when I was in Japan, and if someone gave you something, you had to take it by both hands. If you took it by one hand, it was disrespectful. And there were a lot of customs in Central Asia where if someone did something nice for you, you put your hand on your heart and you leant forward, you bowed forward. There were these conventions set up, and it was all about the giving of gifts and making people feel welcome. In fact, I bribed my way onto a cargo ship in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia to go over to Massawa in Eritrea over the Red Sea. I bribed my way onto that ship with some dates from the most exclusive date shop in Jeddah. It was like Thornton's, but for dates. So they had all these different packages that you could get, and I got like a nice expensive, it was about $50 or something worth of dates, and turned up to the guy who owned the shipping line and said, "Can I get on your boat?" And he went, "Yeah, all right." And he looked like the Kurgan from Highlander. An Arabic Kurgan. Anyway, sorry, completely off topic there. Yoni, thank you very much for the €5 super chat. If France can put a cap on energy prices, why can't the UK? That'll remove the need for things like the winter fuel allowance. We do have a cap. It's just dead high.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could also say France now own EDF. They have, so
yeah,
they nationalised their energy company.
Yeah.
Recently. It was quite recent.
What, they nationalised it recently?
Yeah, so you do sometimes get a bit of dodging. So some people point out, so when... I
thought they weren't allowed to do that under the EU. That's why these socialists were saying, RMT and the Unite Union, we've got to leave the EU so we can nationalise these things that are nationalised in France and Germany and Netherlands.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. But anyway, the... So I saw some people passing, and they do it. I don't think they were deliberately trying to con anyone or anything like that. But they pointed out, it was quite famously, in the wake of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, of course, oil and gas prices went up. And despite Boris Johnson saying, "Oh, isn't it good we've got our own supplies?" Ours massively went up. Oh, it's because of the price of gas up. But how does that affect ours?
Because it's traded on the international market.
Exactly. But it was pointed out our energy bills massively increased. France's went up by like a few percent, 2 to 4%, something like that. And there's people nowadays showing those same figures and going, "Oh, and France own their their sort of energy. So where's the difference here? And it's like, yeah, but they didn't at the time. They had a stake in EDF at the time, but it was not a majority stake. It's since then that but nonetheless, the reason why France's energy didn't go up that much is because the French government thought, we don't want to be that unpopular. We have a bit of a history of guillotines in this country. So whereas, because that's it. I mean, the French, they go too far. But France do not take any shit from their politicians.
Yes.
I'm
amazed
in this
at
country
how
we take far too much.
I should have said that when I was chatting to Liz Webster the other week. She said, like, I was amazed at how civil the farmers' protest in London was when they turned up in the tractors. Like, if that had been France, there would have been shit smeared all over the side of Parliament, like fired out.
They would have brought in bales of hay, piled them up somewhere, inconvenient to them. Because that's the thing that gets me. Like, that's the thing that got me about the tractor thing. It's like, we're going to protest. We're going to go to London. Okay, this will be good. And what was their protest? They got these vehicles which are licensed to ride on a road, and they drove down a road. And it's like, oh yeah, but we went slowly. It's London. Everything's going slowly.
Did I read somewhere that the average speed in London has actually gone down in the last 150 years?
If you're going to have a protest, you've got to think about who you're protesting against and inconvenience those people. So if you're protesting against the government, you've got to inconvenience key members of the government. I always think back to how the EU had George W. Bush spitting feathers because when he tried to engage in a trade war, and the usual thing is like, we're going to whack up tariffs on this, and you do the same to some of their stuff. The EU are much smarter than that, and they specifically targeted things that wouldn't do a lot of damage, it wouldn't make a lot of difference to the American economy, but they targeted American exports that were important to people close to him. Right. So it's hitting his friends and the people in, like, in this case, Florida, because he was from Florida, wasn't he? Was he? No, he wasn't. His brother was Florida. Where was he representing? Can't remember. But wherever it was, they targeted the important businesses there.
Right.
And then when Trump tried it, they did the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. And that's what you need to do. You need to think to yourself, how do we inconvenience the people we want to persuade? And you do that. Not Good other point. People that they don't give a shit about. The MPs didn't even necessarily know tractors went down the road.
But then there were the protesters who broke into one of Rishi Sunak's mansions.
Don't break the law.
There was the group that put a banner down. I think it was Greenpeace put a banner down in front of his house, and someone else broke in and to his manor house in Richmond and did a poo in his in his lake.
You don't necessarily get a lot of. First of all, that's not. To someone like him who's got a clean, you're inconveniencing the cleaner. You're inconveniencing someone on minimum wage. You're actually being shitty to someone on minimum wage is what you're doing. That's not the same thing at all. And also, you're not going to garner much public sympathy if that's what you're after as well.
One angry pagan.
So
one angry pagan says rebellions historically don't go well on this island. Thanks for the super chat.
No.
Well, peasants revolt. What, Tyler? Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was a bit
Tyler?
of a fuck-up.
That didn't go so well. We did have a glorious revolution once. It was just like the Lords decided that we were going to get a new king, and that was the glorious revolution. No one else got a word in edgeways. Anyway, so I think there are more effective demonstrations to be done. I mean, we talked at length about Just Stop Oil and the fact that they're kind of probably a bit counterproductive when it comes to raising awareness of the situation.
They don't raise awareness of anything other than the fact that they just give, it's like if you've got some people on your side and then they just act like complete dickheads, it's like, we're not with them.
Yeah.
We're not with them.
Yeah. Captain Bart Roberts is saying in 1900, the speed of road traffic in London was 11 miles an hour. In 2024, it's slower. I always remember my old man telling me about the rush hour horse-drawn traffic on London Bridge. That must have been a while ago. But yeah, they're talking about pedestrianising Oxford Street in London, which I completely agree with, 100%.
So many towns and cities pedestrianise the middle of it.
And the taxi drivers, taxi. London has the best public transport service in the world by a mile. Like, I will fight anyone who says otherwise. I mean, go to New York and try and get on that bunch of noodly spaghetti lines that they have there, and it's dirty, it's dingy, it's horrible. And I know that the London Underground can be quite noisy, and also it's
noisy
it can
and
get
hot.
very, very hot, and it's just going to get hotter with climate change. But yeah, I mean that's something that it's something that comes with having tunnels under the ground, I guess, and no air conditioning, because when they were built, air conditioning didn't exist. But yeah, it's got an incredible public transport service, and the fact that they haven't pedestrianised the city centre when like every other city centre in not just in the UK but the world is pedestrianised.
Exactly. When I saw that on the news, I thought, okay, how you put it in the news, as long as they don't go mad on this, because it's like they'll just be bringing up to speed with basically every town I've lived in.
Yeah. But there you go. Ernie says there's still an ingrained difference in our culture propagated by our class system and public schools. I think that's true. If you're going to say what's English and what makes it distinctive from Wales and Scotland, I would say that the class obsession. Like, people will not listen to me in this country because of my accent. They won't take me seriously. They will underestimate me.
In London, they might not. Again, is that an English thing? Because that's not that's just you're talking.
Because in Scotland, I mean, you can tell if you're Scottish, you can tell where people are from in Scotland. But if you're posh in Scotland, you just sound English. I've met quite a few people from Edinburgh.
I'm not sure about it, because I think you're focusing on the media here, which is all based in London. So that's like a part of England.
No, but I think any strong accent, people won't take you seriously in England. What school you went to, your background, your upbringing, whether you know which spoon to use.
They had a survey about 20 years ago, and they found that the most trustworthy accent was a Geordie accent. Can't even understand Geordies unless you're actually from there. But it was nonetheless the most trustworthy accent.
It is fun.
But they have this snobbery derives entirely from a small pocket in England, which nonetheless just happens to control all of politics in the media.
I do enjoy translating Geordie into Scouse for my partner, because obviously she can't hear what people are saying, and people do genuinely think that I'm translating from the Geordie. I had to do that once. I was in Africa. I was in East Africa at the time, and the 2010 World Cup was on, and there was an interview that was being streamed on whatever sports channel it was, and it was Steven Gerrard and Wayne Rooney being interviewed, like, you know, when they're sitting behind the table with the microphones, and all the like Africans just looking at me going, what are these people saying? What language are they speaking? And I'm like, it's from Liverpool, it's Scouse. And they're like, I can't understand the word of this, and I was having to translate it into. Well,
that'll just be their accent rather than anything they'll be saying, because like everyone else, they'll have used sort of common to talk into a like larger audience. You don't use, like I do the same here. I don't talk as I would in Yorkshire to other Yorkshire people here, because no one understand a word I was saying.
You don't talk in Yorkshire. But Yodi's saying in Scotland, Graham sounds posh. No, I still have a Scouse accent, but yeah. Living near Birmingham, everyone interprets our accent as Black country, which is extremely different. I mean, look, when we talk about accents, I do think that we are a class-riddled society. I never used to. When I was growing up in Liverpool, I didn't really understand that there was such a massive class divide. I thought that, you know, with enough gumption and enough grit, you could achieve anything. And it wasn't until I got a lot older that I realised that's just not true. It's just not true. There were bounds put in there by the status, by the aristocracy, the neo-aristocracy, the status quo, that keep them in power, and everyone else gets muscled out. And I think that's a particularly English thing. I mean, it might happen in other countries. No, it's not.
You get others. You get it in America, big style. I always find it quite funny that America is like republic on crack, like monarchy, they're like this terrible thing and all the rest of it, and yet their class system is, if anything, more pronounced than ours.
Yeah,
they just it's just. And possibly so because they can't call it that, because you don't have an upper class and middle class, but you have the same things.
They have a middle class,
but in terms
middle class,
like for example, anyone who's ever going to become president will have come from money.
Well, Barack Obama, you could argue he didn't really come from a lot, and
very rich. No, not necessarily to the same extent as many of the others, but he was very wealthy. Whereas in this country, you could actually be prime minister from a normal background. I mean, arguably John Major from the most normal background.
Yeah.
You'd say Keir Starmer in terms of upbringing, but he was very rich before he entered Parliament, whereas arguably John Major not so much.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't get that in America. That would be impossible.
Well, Wilson, Heath, Callaghan, all them, they went to state school. Yeah. Thatcher went to state school. Alec Barrett, thank you very much for the super chat. Here's £2 from the poshest git in Politics Social. Thanks, Alec. I didn't know you were that posh. Can't really tell your accent by reading what you write. Nick says, pretty remarkable how little time it took for society to transition from horses to cars, less than 2 decades. AI automation is the modern equivalent for the coming years. Yeah, could be argued. And then the big Marvinsky says, generational wealth is so pronounced in America due to land grabs and slavery. That's true. And also, if you want to get to one of the top schools over there, they call their universities schools for some reason, you really need to have a posh parent. College, they call it college, don't they? Which college you go to? If your parents went to that college, if they went to Yale or Harvard, or Brown, you've got a better chance of getting in there.
Mm.
And Yoni, €2 super chat saying,
I think they call it legacy, don't they, in America?
Yeah,
if
legacy.
You come from like a posh.
No, your parents went to the school, or one parent went to the school, you're more likely to get in. Yoni, thank you very much for the super chat. Congrats on the well-timed channel name change. Thank you. We saw that coming. Leapshin says, is it true that most Scottish programmes like Taggart, Still Game and Rabsy Nesbitt have subtitles in England? Because you can't understand what they're saying. Lol.
Well, the funny thing about Rabsy Nesbitt is because the guy who plays him is from the south of England, Gregor Fisher. I was quite surprised because it came from Naked Video. I used to watch that as a kid. I loved it and it was basically just one of their skits, you know. And my favourite was like Shadwell, who was like a Welsh vlogger, but or vlogger, it's a video. Hello, Shadwell here. But then they had the Rabsy Nesbitt, which was really good, and then they translated into thing. And I actually kept wondering, do they not think they're taking the piss by getting an Englishman? Because at the time you had a lot of discussion about things like, you know, playing certain characters. Like It Ain't Half Hot Mum, which I often quote because whenever the Tories are whining about something, I always come up with the "Oh dear, how sad, never mind," which is from It Ain't Half Hot Mum.
Yeah. But
the main sort of Indian character in it was played by a British fella who was like blacked up.
Yeah.
And you go, well, there were plenty of Indian actors. In fact, there were other Indian actors playing more junior roles in the show.
Short Circuit, the movie with Johnny Five, is alive. That's the most outrageous example of that. That came out in the mid-'80s, and literally the guy Fisher, he played an Indian character. He's a white guy. Yeah, he played an Indian character. My God, that was.
But you were starting. So what I'm saying is, around about the time, you know, you were starting to have discussions about these things. Oddly enough, no one ever sort of questioned Ben Kingsley playing Gandhi. I don't know why that was.
Because he's Indian. But no, he's of Indian heritage. But Ben Kingsley,
but he was still like, you know.
I know, but he's of Indian heritage. I didn't.
But anyway, but you had a lot of discussion about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you had this English fella playing a Glaswegian folk hero, and I kept thinking to myself, does Scotland? But it was really popular. I think. I don't think anyone ever did. Well, I mean, he did it really well.
I was watching. I thought I was watching something that might have been a video about how why so many juicy roles for Americans in these shows in America, and TV roles are actually played by Brits doing an American accent. And there's dozens of them. It's not just like one or two. Like the guy who played the guy who's pretending he's a Russian agent, pretends to be American in the TV show The Americans, is British. The guy in The Walking Dead is British. Obviously, the guy from House, British. And they said it's often because they're just better actors. And it's not to do with just being able to do the accent. It's to do with the fact that in America, if you get a role on a TV show, it's generally because you're good looking. You're not necessarily that great an actor, but you know you're good looking. Whereas in the UK, you can be a proper minger and still get juicy TV roles, which is good for the rest of us. But like that, so they have a better range.
There is another reason as well. That is one reason. The theatre tradition and stuff like that does mean that, generally speaking, you have a better level of training. But also, the British actors aren't as bullshit with the directors, because apparently American actors are all too often like too demanding. They're basically Karens.
Well, Yoni's saying that the Brits are cheaper.
Well,
Idris Elba in The Wire, and also the guy who played McNulty in The Wire, who was also in The Crown. He's a Brit.
Apparently, they just
loads of
get
examples,
on with it.
dozens of examples.
They're more likely to get on with it. They're proper divas. A lot of American, because they think they're on a show and they made a name for themselves and they're the bee's knees now.
Yeah.
And they start being really demanding. Whereas British actors go script. Oh yeah, the script's decent. I'll have the. Oh, thank you very much. And then just do it.
Yeah. Mia Goth, she's scream queen of the 2020s. I thought she was a Yank. She's not. She's from London. We've got Ivan Ambrose. Thank you very much for the £10 super chat. Thank you. As born and bred in Ipswich in Suffolk, I have a strong Suffolk accent. It's not a very common accent these days, so I like to hold on to it, despite the occasional stick I receive about it. Well, I mean, I like my Scouse accent. I lean into it if I'm talking to a fellow Scouser. But I like the fact that my vowels are soft, and I like the fact that I don't put an R in Bath. You know, there's no R in it. It's BATH. There's no R in it, Phil. Why do people put R's in words that don't exist? I quite like that, and I don't. I don't
know how it was spelt, to be fair, 1,000 years ago. It may have had 2 A's in it or something.
I don't like a really strong whacker Scouse accent where they're actually hacking up. Like, it sounds like, oh God, I've got a cold and I've got to hack up all this phlegm. I don't like that. I don't like it when it gets really nasal. But a soft Scouse accent, I think, is one of the best. But, you know, I'm biased. Nick says, Rees Mogg's probably annoyed that he can't use a punka walla instead of an electric fan in summer. Natoya has said, I tried to make these points on Maximilian yesterday and everyone there were talking of bribes.
That's the thing with the gifts, though, because it could be a bribe, and that's where you just have to be a bit more aware of how it looks to others who are not going to take the time to distinguish between, oh, well, this gift from this. Because I was saying before I knew it was Arsenal that had just given the box, you know, what if it had been a corporate, what if it had been a business that had the box and then said he could use it? Yeah. That would be different. So it's not even just the gift, it's who gave it to you and what might you be able to do in return. Yeah. If there's something you might be able to do in return for them, even if you're not, you know, Keir Starmer could be straight as a die, that doesn't matter. But you know, that can't be your argument. It can't be the argument that, well, because I'm not corrupt, it's fine. It's like, well, people don't know that.
Yeah.
You might know that, but people don't know that. So you have to distinguish. But at the same time, I still come back to this. I mean, the people who said nothing or little about Tory leaders actually breaking the rules to hide gifts and interests do not get to complain at someone who's following. And who set the rules? The Conservatives, because they were in power for 14 years. So if they had a problem with these rules, they could have. They had a majority in Parliament. Not all of those 14 years. They had a majority in Parliament for a lot of them. They could have changed the rules.
Yeah.
They didn't. They were happy with the rules.
But I'd like to see Labour, like you said, let's get some rules in here. Let's say a gift's above a certain amount, you can't have them. Because of the worry. And the Tories will be back one day, I'm pretty sure, whether it's like in some mutated form stuck onto the side of refuck. But the thing is, they will be back, and we need to have rules in place for when they come back so they can't absolutely monumentally take the piss out of the rest of us, like what they did with Partygate. Anyway. When the Daily Mail said, "Is that it?" You know, like, "Oh, is that all?" There were 19 parts. Is that it? Oh, the reports come out. Is that it? And I'm like, my God, if that had been Labour doing that, would you be saying, "Is that?"
Oh
it?
Yeah.
Got a couple of super chats before we go. We've got One Angry Pagan, £5 super chat. Thank you very much. Robbie Coltrane doing a West Country accent, I guess as Hagrid in Harry Potter, is really impressive to me. Not many Northerners can get it. Lol. It's the sound.
I do my what do you call it in a West Country accent, don't I? We are the champions. That's my.
I can't do a West trick. I just sound like a pirate.
Well, that's the thing. It was yesterday. International Talk Like a Pirate Day. When I was a teacher, I used to start my lessons doing it. It does the throat in after a while.
It does.
I used to start my lessons in it. The problem is that if I do it for too long, it can sometimes turn a bit Irish.
Well, I did a couple of years ago. It was International Talk Like a Pirate Day on the day of the Queen's funeral. So I did a watch party where I did the entire commentary dressed as and speaking like a pirate.
Oh, just to be classy.
Just to be classy. I miss her. I miss the old scurvy sea wench. Anyway, Puninator, thank you very much for the £5 super chat and the really nice message. It says, you saved the Scouse accent for me, Graham. My old man is originally from Liverpool, so I had a bad association with the accent growing up. So sorry your old man gave you that, but I'm glad to have redeemed my city, in your eyes. And if anyone's in Liverpool next week on the Monday at 7:30, the link is in the description. The blurb is the description, isn't it, of the video? But I'm just going to put it back here. I'm just going to put it into the chat. It has 7:30. It's just a little pub. We're going to be upstairs in the pub. It's just going to be a few dozen people. It's not like a massive event or anything. But I'll be there. Mike Galsworthy will be there. Femi Oluwole will be there. And also we've got Peter Corr of the National Rejoin March, who's always a good egg. So come along. We're going to be talking. Do all roads lead back to Europe? Because although we agree broadly that we should be getting back into Europe ASAP, we all have different opinions on how the best way to do that. We'll be sitting around the table, having a pint, we'll love you to join us. It's going to be kind of like 4 blokes in a pub live, so please come to that. It's also going to be streamed live on this channel. That'll be good. Jürgen Splurgen, what a great name. Thank you very much for the £2 super chat, mate. Why can't Labour WFP cuts winter fuel cuts with VIP lane fraud?
I suspect it's because we knew about the VIP lane fraud, and the winter fuel payments has been linked with a hole in the budget that they didn't know about. Right. I suspect. That's only my. Hasn't
the Bank of England just found £1 billion down the back?
Well,
of 10 billion.
There's pros and cons. Like there's things that Rachel Reeves is probably going to do that just redefines things that will find her a load of extra money. But then there's the news today, for example, the cost of borrowing has gone up again, which creates extra headaches. Also, there's talk about, national debt over 100% as a proportion of GDP for the first time since 60s. It's like, do you think because this is partly, it's like the debt can be high, and obviously that means the proportional debt is high. But if your GDP is artificially low, that also raises it. And I keep saying our GDP is 18% lower in real terms than it was in 2010.
Yeah.
And more should be made of that. The fact that Labour should make more of that. They actually shrunk our economy. They shrunk our economy in real terms.
The Tories, just to be clear, not Labour.
Because as far as it's in power since 2010. So, Labour didn't do that. Actually, to be fair, the previous Conservative government didn't do that even. But Labour certainly didn't do that. They grew theirs.
Well, our economy hasn't grown substantially since 2008.
No.
That's really
and
bad.
For some countries it didn't. Some countries recovered and some countries didn't, because we weren't the only one with a crap government. There were other governments that were crap as well, and it's because they had this attitude of not funding any investment.
Yeah,
they just wanted to cover what they thought were basic running costs.
Yeah, austerity. That's austerity. Just the absolute bare minimum, and that means that everyone is just living to work, slave to the machine, and no one's happy. And if you don't have people who have social mobility, if you don't have people who have disposable income, your economy, if it's a capitalist economy, will slowly fall apart, because capitalism needs social mobility. It needs to have people with disposable incomes. If people are just spending all their money on rent and food, and keeping the house warm.
The irony with the capitalism is if it's going to work at all, you can't actually have people that are so wealthy that they don't need anything more. So it actually falls down when people are too rich. And, if you're going to have a capitalist model that actually works, it falls down when people are too rich. And yet the Conservatives used to make sure it was those who were too rich that got richer.
Yeah, especially landlords. Buy a house.
Not a landlord.
Get other people to pay for your mortgage.
Landowners.
Buy to let. Buy to let.
Yeah, that was
So you buy to let, and then you put someone in who's on universal credit. You take money off the taxpayer to pay for your second house. Nice.
It's
what
like
a great system.
in the Telegraph, was it earlier this week? I think it was earlier this week, when they had this story about this landlord who had like 60 odd homes that he rented out, and he's going to sell 35 of them. And the whole sketch, and it was to do with these renters reforms, and the whole article was about how this is what Labour are causing now. And I thought, if I'm looking at this through Labour's eyes, I'm thinking, yeah, they're comfortable with this because he's going to sell 35 houses. Now, okay, the current tenants are that's awkward. They may have to find someone else, but they're going to be bought by someone. Now, they're still going to be used for people to live in. So they're either going to be bought by another landlord who will still rent them out, in which case nothing's really changed, or they'll be bought by people who will use it to live in which case up to 35 more families have now got their own home instead of renting. Yeah, I don't see the downside for that. In fact, Labour would like him to sell the rest. If I were Labour, a representative of Labour, responding to this article, I'd say, "Oh, this is actually marvellous news. Would he like to sell the other 30?"
Yeah. Paul is asking, thank you very much for the super chat. How many Tory treasurers received honours for cash?
All but one of them. There was one, I think, that didn't. I think there was one that didn't. So they may have been genuinely supporting the party. The rest of them handed over £3 million and got a seat in the House of Lords. It wasn't an honour. It's specifically a seat in Parliament.
Yeah, in our legislature. Great. Anyway, we should wrap it up there. We're 7 minutes over. Thank you very much, Phil. Sorry for blaming my lateness on you. I only sent Phil the link to the Zoom call like at 1 minute to 1 o'clock. Sorry about that. But I'll be back later at 9:30 for the note the time change. So you can watch Maximilian's stream and then you can watch us on the Politics Social, where we'll be joined by a team of lovely people who will be talking about what's been happening, not just in the UK, but around the world this week. So we'll be talking about what's been happening in the American election. We'll also be talking about what happened in Lebanon with the exploding walkie-talkies and pages. We'll also be talking about the absolutely horrific allegations that have been made against the late Mohammed Al-Fayed, the owner of
former Harrods owner,
and how complicit Harrods was in all this. And it does beg the question, is every super rich man in the world absolutely monstrously evil? And the evidence, the preponderance of evidence at the moment is yes.
I think the evidence can be, if they are, they can let their evil run reign more easily.
I think you have to be evil to make that much money. Yeah.
I don't know.
They think they're above the law. I say men because everyone will say, well, what about Taylor Swift? And I go, okay, Taylor Swift, I'll let her off.
I don't think she's been accused of any horrific acts.
No, so all men. Not all, hashtag not all men, but yes, all super rich men. Absolute monsters. Anyway, Epstein, Weinstein, and now, Al-Fayed. Not great. Anyway, but what will be good is if I see you later. But if you can't make that, and you are going to be going to the Labour Party conference, 7:30 on Monday night, we're going to be doing a live thing. And I've just put the link into the chat. I'll do it again. Here you go. And just click on that, and the tickets are free. So just come along.
Or just happen to be in Liverpool because it's not actually at the conference.
No, it's down the road. City. Down the road from the conference. And it's only 10 minutes walk from Lime Street Station if you're coming in. We'll be done by 8:30. So if you're in the area, you can get back to Birmingham. Or Manchester or Leeds on the 9 o'clock train, no problem. But yeah, I don't know about getting back to London. Yeah, you might be able to get back to London. You probably have to run though. And then Puddinator says, hang on, Phil, depends on your opinion of her singing. We learned a couple of weeks back Graham wasn't a fan. I am a fan of Taylor Swift. What are you talking about?
I'm not a fan of any modern. As far as I'm concerned, the music died when Freddie Mercury did. So everyone's been shit since.
Jesus, that's a long time to hold a grudge against mortality.
Yeah. I'm not actually a huge fan of music. I rarely listen to it, and I only listen to it's not like a narrow range of types of music. There's lots of types of music, but a very narrow range of like artists within each genre that I think are any good. No. So I'm not a music fan.
Well, I am a music fan.
I couldn't name a Taylor Swift song. I couldn't.
Shake it off.
I genuinely.
Smallest man who ever lived.
I've not heard of any.
Anti-hero?
I've not heard any.
You need to
I
calm
would never
down.
be. I don't listen to the radio, Graham. I would never be in a position to ever listen to one of her songs and recognise it as one of her songs. I don't even watch telly, so I'm unlikely to come across it in an advert.
Love Story? No, okay, right, we're going. We've got to get going. I can be
Was she singing before Freddie Mercury died? If not, I don't know her songs.
Oh well. Anyway, right, on that note, see what I did there. I'd like to say a big thank you to Phil Moorhouse of a different bias. Please, if you're not already subscribed to his channel, please go over and subscribe to it. And like I say, we'll be back at 9:30 tonight with the Politics Social. Please crack open a can of your favourite beverage or pour yourself a hot drink. And we'll see you then. And until then, I'll say give us a like on the way out. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.